Hello and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed with DrPND, where we help you reclaim your health with tips, tools, and resources to live your most optimal and vibrant life. Here's your host, DrPND.
Welcome to Your Health Reclaimed. This is your host, Dr. PND, and today we're going to do another podcast, and we're going to talk about the follow-up from last time, which we did on adrenals. We're going to talk about the thyroid, which is part of the HTPA axis, the hypothalamic thyroid adrenal axis, and one of them definitely is going to affect the other, and vice versa. And we usually have a dysfunction, you're going to have dysfunction in both, whether people realize it or not. But today we're strictly going to focus on thyroid. In this case, we're going to talk about a very, very common condition that I see all the time, the hypothyroid, or meaning underfunctioning thyroid. So real quick, I'm going to, by the way, keep this to a minimum. Hopefully I can. My goal is to really keep those podcasts below 40 minutes. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. It all depends. But anyway, so real quick, the pathophysiology of hypothyroid in a nutshell. Hypothyroidism obviously is a condition that, in which the thyroid gland does not produce enough thyroid hormones, which leads to an underactive thyroid, bottom line, okay? The thyroid hormones are thyroxine, T4, your triiodothyronine, which is T3. Those two especially play a vital role in regulating metabolism, growth, and the normal function of every single cell and tissue and organ in our bodies. In the United States, and actually in Europe now too, generally speaking, especially Eastern Europe, the most common cause of hypothyroidism is an autoimmune thyroid disease called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Okay. Globally, the most common cause of hypothyroidism is ultimately an inadequate intake of iodine and selenium. The prevalence of hypothyroidism has significantly increased in the last 2 decades, especially in the United States. I believe it's 2019, hypothyroidism is estimated to has affected over 30 million people over the age of 18 in the United States alone. So definitely, things have skyrocketed from 20, 30 years ago. And he suggested that almost 50% of individuals actually even remain untreated or really are not addressed. But these are the statistics, depending on the governing agency who you look at. But from what I was able to tell, and what research shows, it's pretty accurate. Within a few percent here and there. Bottom line is this: there's a problem. Okay, everybody knows it. So it's just as simple as that. What the percentage actually is doesn't really matter. But it's a growing problem and growing exponentially, along with all general chronic disease in the state. So hypothyroidism may be asymptomatic, okay, or cause numerous range of non-specific symptoms that can vary from very mild, moderate, to obviously very severe. And they really differ from person to person. They really do. These symptoms may include bradycardia, cold intolerance, thinning of the eyebrows, falling hair, dry skin, poor concentration, menstrual irregularities for women. Constipation is a big one, general fatigue, and weight gain, again, primarily, especially in women. I should say primarily, but especially in women. Hypothyroidism can be categorized into primary, secondary, and basically tertiary types. Primary hypothyroidism is more common and really occurs when the thyroid itself is underactive. It is more prevalent in women than in men for some reason, and typically affects individuals between average 30 to 50 plus years of age. Why, I don't know. It doesn't really matter at this point. Secondary and tertiary hypothyroidism occur when there is a dysfunction in the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal thyroid axis. Okay, this is your secondary and tertiary dysfunction. Okay, so there's a difference there, but it really, what I'm going to discuss with you, generally speaking, if you apply these principles, that will affect both. So first of all, again, to be really properly diagnosed with hypothyroidism, you really cannot just look at TSH like most tests do, and maybe T4 and T3. You really have to do a very comprehensive panel, and those diagnostic biomarkers and clinical indicators of hypothyroidism are extremely important. So I'm going to go over them with you so you know what they are. Well, you do a comprehensive thyroid panel. Here's what it actually looks like. You do a TSH, right? So that's a given. That's thyroid stimulating hormone. T4, which is the thyroxine. You do also a free T4. You do the triiodothyronine T3 and a free T3. You do also a reverse T3. So there's 3 T3s. You have the T3, you have the free T3, and you have the reverse T3. And remember, you have 2 T4s. You have the T4 and a free T4. Okay. And in addition, you also have a fourth T3 that is going to be a T3 uptake. Okay. And primary hypothyroid, you're going to see a decreased T4 and or T3 and an increase in TSH. Because when you have a primary hypothyroidism, your pituitary gland is going to be sending the signal to your thyroid, the TSH, to stimulate the hormone, and your thyroid is not producing it. Okay, that's why you're going to have an increased TSH, because the pituitary is telling the thyroid produce, and your thyroid cannot or is not, and it's not producing T4 and the T3, and that's why, generally speaking, how you can tell primary hypothyroidism when you have a decreased T4 and T3 and an increase in TSH. Secondary and tertiary hypothyroid, you're going to have a decreased T3 and T4 and also a decreased TSH. Okay. What does that mean? Well, it means that ultimately you have a dysfunction on all levels here, and you really have to be careful how you read those tests. Somebody has to be qualified to read those tests, because a lot of people get prescribed medications and will get overlooked in the first place. So in addition to the tests I mentioned, there's also a few other tests. You're going to look for the thyroxine binding globulin, or TBG, and you're also going to look for thyroid antibodies. There's 2 types of antibodies in those tests they look for. There's the thyroid peroxidase, the TPO, and there's the thyroglobulin antibody, which is TGAB. Okay, so thyroid antibodies and thyroid binding globulin. Okay, I don't have the time to go in here and get complex, and I don't think the podcast anybody really would even understand, quite frankly, unless you do it for a living. It's easier to look at charts and to look at actually graphs, but there's a lot of correlation in conversion patterns. Obviously, if you have thyroid antibodies, if you have thyroid binding globulin, how high is it? A lot of different things can interplay. Okay. The good news is this, that most often, if done correctly, this condition can be completely reversed or at least drastically improved. Okay. Considering there's no any other underlying issues that obviously get complex. But here's the bottom line when it comes to lifestyle interventions and therapeutic diet and nutritional considerations. So I always recommend a good balanced diet. Okay, again, no low carb, especially when it comes to keto or no carbs. Just like the adrenal glands, low carb, let alone keto, it will really damage that. It will really do a damage. Even in a healthy person, I venture to say that most people, if they do keto diets for a long period of time, they will see a hypothyroidic state shift going down. It might not be a disease state, it might not be a clinical state, but they'll see a downregulation of thyroid function by default, and they're also going to see a lower basal metabolic rate at some point in time. It might be many months, it might be a few years, but they will get there eventually. I promise you that. So, ketogenic diets, when people ask me, they can be beneficial short-term or mid-term for certain conditions, more certainly. And those are usually more neurological conditions that I do not deal with. They can be, but for the average person, or for me to stay shredded and lean with a six-pack, ketogenic diets are not the best way to go by any means. First of all, when it comes to diet, you have to respect bio-individuality. That makes a big difference. But even before that, you need to do a food sensitivity test to see what you're sensitive to. If you have hypothyroidism, okay, have it chronically for a long time, you will have some kind of gastrointestinal dysfunction. I can guarantee you that. So a GI map test is in order. A food sensitivity is in order, and then from there, it's recommended that you follow a good, wholesome, well-balanced macro and micronutrition diet. Okay, where the carbohydrates are definitely no less than 30%. Okay, or give or take. There are healthy starches, again, like sweet potatoes, yams, potatoes, rice, oatmeal, quinoa, buckwheat. These are good, healthy, stable starches that are gentle for most people. Some people argue, well, some of the grains. Well, it depends. Again, you have to test to see if you have a problem with that, and by individuality, it does make a difference. I have people who have sensitive to sweet potatoes and yams, so they can't have that. They can't stand potatoes, for example. So it really all depends. There's not really a right answer. But remember, I'm speaking from a clinical standpoint. I'm speaking from working with people, down dirty, deep in the trenches, and seeing reality, not research, not clinical findings of some theories or assumptions or observational aspects, but of actual clinical experience with with real people that I personally know and get to know, and I get to help and work with, and I see the reality. So keep that in mind. Okay, these are not theories. These are not me researching and citing studies and or doing my own studies. It's experience. Take it or leave it. But you want to have a good balanced carbohydrate intake, because in the long term, low, very low, and especially keto will hurt you. I promise you that. Okay, especially if you're if you're a woman, and even a man over 40, 50 years old, you're gonna have problems. You have adrenal stress, you have thyroid stress, which one, it cannot go without the other by default to some extent or another. You will end up struggling. So respect carbohydrates and don't let it drop below 30%. That has been my experience. Balanced diets are always the best, hands down. In addition, at nighttime, it is very good to eat a good healthy carbohydrate with your meal, because it allows for serotonin production and release, and also is going to make you sleep better. If you don't believe me, try it. Eat a big salad with lean meat of some kind or not, and see how you sleep, as opposed to if you eat the same meal but add like a healthy starch, like rice or potato or yam or sweet potato or something like that, and see how much better you actually end up sleeping. Carbohydrates are very important, especially when it comes to thyroid health. Do not go low carb. I cannot tell you that. Healthy fruits, organic, obviously vegetables and fruits, but in this case, the fruits are also very good. Depending on the person, again, tubers such as potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, yuca will do generally better, especially if the person has certain digestive issues and they can digest a lot of fiber, and which is found like a lot of the grains. So you just have to see. But a food sensitivity, comprehensive food sensitivity test will reveal what you should and what you should not eat. It's really that simple. It really makes a big difference. So you have to also support, as we talked about, GI map test. I run on anybody with thyroid without fail, because you will always see some kind of deficiency or some kind of dysfunction in the GI without fail. You have to address selenium and iodine deficiency. The best you can do is test for those. You can test, they're simple tests. You can test for iodine and selenium. I like a hair mineral test that is actually along with the blood test. It gives you a better understanding of what the levels are and what actual the concentrations are in the cell. But when you're addressing iodine and selenium and they're both deficient, you always want to address selenium first, then iodine. A lot of times, people, especially autoimmune, for whatever reason, if you start to give them iodine, even of bioavailable, good high quality source, it can backfire. I'm not going to go into detail why or how, but address selenium deficiency first before you address iodine, or at the very least address them at the same time with natural sources of iodine. And there are a few companies out there that have, seaweed extracts and, other forms of, whole food-based iodine. If they can eat Brazil nuts, which is extremely high in selenium, again, back to what we talked about, in the previous podcast, supplements always reign supreme because they can dose them accurately, specifically, at the right frequency, and the right dosing and timing for the person without deviation, as opposed to food. You don't know what the person is able to digest, absorb, assimilate, and also you have no idea what was in the soil that this food was grown on. So you might eat Brazil nuts, but if they're from some conventional farm that have been overgrown, who knows how much selenium they really actually have. And if the person is sensitive or let alone allergic to those nuts, then it's a disaster waiting to happen. Now, the good thing about selenium, halibut and sardines and shrimp do have quite a bit. And that's really good. So if people are not sensitive to those, these are actually very healthy, high quality foods that obviously have a lot of protein to eat. Iodine, again, good quality, clean seaweed, cod, shrimp, good organic pasture raised eggs, and generally speaking, seafood has that. If you're addressing deficiency with iodine, as I said before, from food is not a problem. If you're addressing it from a supplemental standpoint, especially something like a synthetic derivative like potassium iodide, which is very common, it's not bad, but it's very common, it's very strong, it's very easily can replenish the iodine source, but it can backfire if you do not address selenium first. So remember that. As long as you're eating just actual real food, not a problem. While talk about seafood, whatever you do, make sure that you avoid high mercury fish, especially things like tuna, swordfish, shark, tilefish, king mackerel, and marlin. These are very high in mercury and sometimes other toxins. Why, I don't really know, but they are. Also, avoid excessive intake of raw cruciferous vegetables or soy products. Due to they do contain goitrogens, especially if somebody has autoimmune hypothyroidism, that will definitely aggravate things. Some people argue that if you cook them, the goitrogens can be destroyed or minimized, potentially so. I'd rather just avoid those vegetables for the time being until things are fixed. Not eating broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, I don't think is gonna end your life or change your life in a significant way for a time being. Definitely avoid soy products, including tempeh and tofu, organic or not. So, lifestyle interventions. They're very, very actually similar to adrenals. Because remember, you're not going to affect the thyroid or something, or stress, or exogenous, endogenous stress, psychological, physical stress. That is not going to affect the adrenals and vice versa. It's not going to happen. So with this, thyroid, especially if it's autoimmune, obviously you have to support the immune system. Okay, and first and foremost, as I said, you have to remove the triggers, which is food sensitivities, toxins, like we talked about in the adrenal podcast, and fix the GI. Yeah, if you have intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut, if you have high calprotectin levels, high zonin levels, these are signs of inflammation and intestinal permeability. You have to fix that. Obviously, if there's any pathogens, that has to be addressed, but you got to fix the GI. Bottom line. Because 80% or so of your immune system is directly or indirectly mediated in your GI. So the GI has to be addressed, and the immune system has to be supported without fail. Whether it's autoimmune, obviously, is more important, but even just regular hypothyroid, you definitely have to support the immune system by default. Identify, again, any and all environmental sources of toxins, especially halogens, fluoride, bromide, and really be very careful. My advice is to remove anything that contains those ingredients in your home and consumption. So first of all city water is fluoridated. They just passed a law, I believe, that they're going to start taking it out. I'm not sure when or how. Fluoride has been around for a long time. There's been a lot of problem has been caused by it. That a lot of people have spoken about it, written about it, but until now, nobody has done anything about it. So in the meantime, get a reverse osmosis water filtration system or a high quality water distillation system for your consumption. Anything that you cook with, anything you drink with, brush your teeth with, use that type of water, hands down. Okay. So very important. Personal hygiene products, again, you have to be careful because those are loaded. Cleaners, air fresheners, basically remove any and all chemicals from your house. You really just, there's a lot of websites out there, the Environmental Working Group, EWG. You can go on there. They have awesome databases, again, from skin, their skin deep database that is called, to personal hygiene, to clothing, to cleaning agents, foods, you name it. But you have to remove those chemicals. You have to. Okay. Another thing, again, is back to the stress. Listen to the adrenal webinar that we did, the podcast, I'm sorry. And I talked about the stress. You have got to address your stress. Worry about what you can control, eliminate that, or reduce it drastically, and do not worry about what you cannot control. But stress, I know it's like a broken record, and there's a lot of people have talked about it, but very few people pay attention to it because you cannot really honestly see it. And a lot of the stressors in life are cumulative. And one of the things I made a point, a very quick way to eliminate stress is stop watching garbage on TV, stop watching anything that has negativity. Whether that be news, whether that be soap operas, whether that be reality TV shows, unless obviously there's something positive, and fun and like, gardening or cooking or something. But things that, incite real life events, whether, a popular TV show like SEAL Team or Blue Bloods, Chicago Fire, I don't know what else, the King of Tulsa, all these are shows that are ultimately nothing but, violence, murder, theft, assault, rape, stealing, cheating, lying, and they portray real life events. The NCIS shows, a lot of people are addicted to those. Again, you're just putting violence and negativity in your mind, and it might sound funny, but it's reality because your body has to process that. So yes, in your mind, you're like, well, this is fake. It's just entertainment. Well, it is entertainment, but it portrays real life events that actually take place to real people. And perhaps you or somebody might have experienced some unfortunate event or have witnessed something like that. And bottom line is that these things cause stress. They really, really do. And if you remove the news, remove mindless scrolling on social media, remove anything with negativity and violence, you'll be amazed at how much difference it makes. I promise you that. Try watching entertaining stuff that are funny, positive, and building, whatever that might be to you. It can be music, it can be, watching the funnies, the American Funniest Videos, the funny fails. There's a show called Pure Fails. It's hilarious on YouTube. Watch gardening, anything that is about creativity and building and positivity. You'll be amazed. I'm preaching to the choir here because I have fallen victim to that numerous times. I was raised on action movies, and even though I never like horror and gore and like aggressive thrillers, I liked action. Well, the action still, even the benign PG-13 ones is nothing but suggestive of, it shows violence and murder and other stuff like that your mind subconsciously takes in. Try it. I dare you. I challenge you to try it, and for 1 week and see what happens. I promise you will feel better without fail. So address that stress, because the stress will definitely affect those gentle glands, and the thyroid is a very gentle gland. So it's a very, let's say, weak, but it's not a strong. It's not a big gland. It doesn't take a lot to get damaged. Okay, and ultimately, all of that is telling you your body's way of telling you that you're stressing me out, you're hurting me. That's what it ultimately boils down to. So I know it takes a lot. It takes a lot of intentionality, a lot of discipline, a lot of diligence, strong will to do that. It's not easy. I get that. Habit changes are the hardest, hands down. As simple as that might be, they are absolutely the hardest. Especially if we associate them with a lot of fun and pleasure and community, family, whatever it might be that we want to watch that. So I really admonish you to start to address these. You'll never be sorry. I promise you that. Last thing I'll mention again because I have to is alcohol. Alcohol, there's a lot of problems with alcohol. I'm going to do actually a third podcast, believe it or not, the dangers and the perils of alcohol consumption, chronic or semi-chronic or regular, what they call. We're not talking about being a drunkard. We're not talking about consuming high amounts, drinking a lot. We're talking about just regular average person that consumes, give or take, 40 grams of alcohol a week. That's usually about a 12-ounce beer a day, or like a glass of wine a night, which a lot of people do. Avoid alcohol. If you want to fix your thyroid, you will have to avoid alcohol, otherwise it's not going to happen. I'm not talking about once a month having a celebration with a friend or some special occasion that you have a couple of drinks or more a little bit, not a problem. But the regular consumption of ethanol will not allow your thyroid to heal, nor your adrenals, nor not really a lot else. Since we're talking about thyroid in this podcast, avoid alcohol. So if you guys have any more questions, reach out to us. Go to drpnd.com. We're on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Come and, check in with us. If you have any questions, reach out to us. I offer free consultations. Would love to talk to you. I'd love to see if I can help you or clarify at least something else out. Send us an email, send us a text. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, the goal is, to really live a healthy life, a vibrant life, or at least the best that we can based on our own circumstances that we live in and our own genetic traits that we have and we possess. We obviously don't live in a perfect world, and nobody will ever be perfect, but we really can do a lot to really change the state of health that we're in, that our country's in. Everything and everybody's going to be for the better if we do this. I know it's not easy. I had my health journeys a few times, and it was a struggle. It wasn't easy, but was it worth it? Absolutely. I would have paid any price for that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. And until next time, we're going to continue with those types of podcasts to be able to educate you guys and give you some kind of, bottom line information that you can hopefully apply, immediately in your health journey, or at least have a better understanding of the situation. Okay. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your valuable time and for listening to the Your Health Reclaimed podcast with Dr. PND. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a person you know it can help. If we can help you in any way, or you would like to connect with Dr. PND, please visit drpnd.com. That's drpnd.com.